Hanabiya, we are here for the premiere of their new song. It's called Iconic, and I'm expecting it probably is going to be iconic. Now, I've just got this all set up with only 50 seconds left to go, so I haven't got much time to explain my general thoughts, but if you've been following this channel, you'll know my general thoughts on this band. I absolutely love the fact that they're bringing songwriting, innovation, so much more than just heavy. In fact, the heaviness in their songs tends to be well justified by just how cleverly they build up to those moments. The quirkiness, the fun, but of course, if you've seen any of the artwork on photographs that came out before this, they've got an interesting look for this as well, so I don't know what to expect. This is assumedly the beginning of their new line of releases. We've got 15 seconds to go. I'm hoping for something a little bit crazy, a little bit bizarre, but carrying all of those fundamental qualities that we love of the band so much. Anyway, we're going in for the premiere, and then afterwards we'll talk about it a bit some more. All right. Lovely EDM build up. If you ever worked in a call center, you're getting trauma right now. The build-up is really intense, quite long as well. I recognize this build-up. This is very much all in the build-up, and that's what I love about Loving that slide on the guitar as well. More Matsuri is always a good thing. It's bouncing between the two ideas so perfectly. Oh, I like that as a hook. Is that the hook? The visuals are definitely helping a lot. I barely know what to say about that. That did so much of what I wanted to hear from them so well. We don't get any credits at the end of anything, but all right, where do we even begin with this one? Even the freeze frames are brilliant. Okay, what can we realistically say about this? First things first. It's really nice sometimes when I do like intros to these pieces where something I say in the intro actually ends up coming to fruition in the actual song that we hear. And in this particular case, I have to be honest, this did exactly what I said about that whole idea that when they are going to do something which is heavy and loud, it's actually built up to. It feels impactful because you build up to it. It's the reward for a build up. And the funny thing is, actually, in the past, I had mentioned about, Hanabi using, like, EDM elements. And I actually got some kickback from some people in the comments who were like, oh, they don't use EDM, they're not EDM. It's like, no, they fuse genres. That's what makes them so interesting. And in this particular case, this was probably the most I've ever really heard them properly lean into the EDM direction. And that this, starts off with that sort of lo-fi build-up, the telephone sounds and all that kind of stuff is kind of used as... to give it a little bit of a cheeky, quirky edge, but then, so that's in the intro when we're sort of first building up, we get the, I really like this intro, it's kind of very weirdly lo-fi. Using little sound samples of the voice there, and then clearly setting what the bass line is, having that sort of synth-sounding bass line there, really, properly introduced at that bit. And then this is just an intro though, because you get a lot of pause afterwards. Build up. And it also really establishes their personality. You get to see the sort of fun, quirky personality, even if you're not familiar with it. It's very clearly established in this moment. So you get the stop, and then even then the real build-up hasn't properly begun, because then we get the actual EDM that properly kicks in for real. You getting that build-up, that filter phaser kind of like build up there as the voice and everything comes in and starts to flesh out. And then you notice at this point, now it's coming heavy, but even here, like the guitars are kind of stabbing. So we're getting like the Yuki Onna vocal, we're getting that heaviness, but even then it still is kind of like indicating to you that it's got more in the pocket. It's indicating that, we're still in the build up. The guitar's there, but it's stabbing. It's definitely, the song's come in at this point, but it's just kind of stabbing away in the background. And again, great how we're using that sort of mixture of vocal styles. This is another thing that, again, sets Yuki Onna apart from so many of her peers, is the fact that she balances out the sort of the more heavy metal style vocals with these kind of cute moments that give, again, contrast. Contrast just makes everything better. So again, now we got this bit where it's kind of heavier, but again, everything's kind of like dropped down to a lower key. It's not quite settled in. Just again, the building up. And then we're back to this refrain. And this is kind of interesting because this is what's making, again, this is why I like their songwriting so much. And, I'm glad Matsui's on the screen, because Matsui, unless something's different in the song, Matsui is usually the mastermind behind why their songs are like this. This kind of feeling that the songs are always kind of like got direction, got purpose. And again, we've come back to this build up again. We come back to this and it's building up more and more and more. You notice how the bass line now is walking up. Like everything's given that building up feeling. And this is the bit where obviously now the song has kind of finally dropped in. So how far are we through? That's 2 minutes prior to the ending. Sorry, it's in premiere mode. So that's like a good, like a minute and 20 seconds in before it drops. And this is a song that's been through a lot of phases very quickly. And now we're getting a full riff with like the guitar slides and everything. And this is the bit where you can say, yeah, the song's definitely sort of come in. Does that for a while and then it breaks down again. And this is what I mean, is like structurally, whatever you think about this sort of style of music, structurally it's doing so many clever things.
You know.
So it goes to that heavy but off-key bit, and then back to this kind of like more, kind of more, if you like, this is like the refrain, well, kind of like the chorus. This is the bit where everything kind of comes together, this sort of heavier part here. And at this point, you think you've kind of got the measure, because this is like the payoff. This is the bit that the song's always building up to, this kind of heavy bit. But then it pulls a bit of an interesting left turn. In my mind, that's a really good chorus right there. They're just like, after all of that, and you're thinking, okay, what this is all building up to is just the heavy bit, you get paid off with a really good melodic chorus, like a sing-along chorus that just feels like it ramps off beautifully from everything that's come before it. And then we go back to the heaviness, which kind of sees us through towards the end. Yeah, I mean, this is what I mean. All these heavier bits, they feel gleefully fun because they are coming off the back of a song that is working up to them, building up to them, justifying them, putting them in places where they feel like the right emotional reward for what's come before. They pay off bits of tension. The song has development. It's just going all the way through to this big loud ending. I just think this is a great example of their songwriting, their mixture of genres, their mixture of styles, their mixture of all these kind of things. I also like as well, we kind of now know what the visuals are, this kind of idea about them all being in kind of like a monochrome look. It's very stylish, it's very cool, but obviously you can see it's them in basically what looks like the freaking, what they call it, Apple shop, where everything's just white and creepy, and so it kind of gives you this feeling that in this, they're behind the phones and they're basically like drones. There's no personality, everything's monochrome, everything's white, everything's lacking in personality. And then when they come to be themselves, the color bursts out, and then you get to see them looking like them, stylish and colorful. It's a really good visual shorthand. I also think the video did some really cool things, letting them, again, if you've got a band with a lot of personality, let them show that personality, let that come out. The last bit where it goes heavy, and then as a result everything sort of breaks down to this slow motion chaos, very beautifully done. Really like that. I thought that was kind of cool. Slow motion usually is not the best idea for when you're going for like a heavy crescendo of a song, but these are really nice shots where they've got so much happening in each shot. There's stuff flying everywhere. It looks iconic. For me, this is just a really nice example of how to execute a really cool delivery. I've been doing this Q&A thing on my channel recently and been posting it slowly, and one of the questions that I think came up in part 2 of the Q&A was, what do you think is the band leading kind of like the female heavy metal charge at the moment? And I have mixed feelings on heavy metal as a genre. It has its bits that I think are positive and bits that I think are negative. It has its legends, it has its upcomers. I kind of said that at the moment I think that Hanabi are kind of like the peak of that particular mountain, because in my opinion what they're doing is they're showing a creative way forward, rather than just sort of like repeating tropes of the past. They're taking sounds that we're familiar with, genres we're familiar with. Like the EDM elements of this, the kind of old school EDM, this stuff that you could have heard 20 years ago. The heavy metal elements, I'm sure you could hear them in virtually any decade. But the way they're fusing things, moving them forwards, the way they're representing it, the comedy they're adding into it, the whole, when you put everything together, and most importantly the way their songs are structured with this really interesting development where the songs move forwards in these really cool, interesting ways, you put all of that together and you end up with a band who I feel are delivering songs where each one feels purposeful, original, and well thought out. And this to me is like the future of that style of genre. So Harajuku Core, they may call themselves, but to me that is their... And I appreciate that, but I don't think you should be pigeonholed by a genre if you can avoid it, especially with Japanese bands who are so diverse in what they do. But for me, this was a great example of like pushing forwards in a really interesting direction. And, you could furthermore say this is not something that Hanabi haven't particularly done before, but I feel like this is a fresh take on their style. Like with all their songs, even if you know roughly what the formula is that Hanabi work from, it's a formula where they keep on giving you surprises in the details. Like I say, this song very heavily leading into the EDM, very heavily leading into the idea that the build-up is what you get. And those little left turns where Matsuri comes in with the melodic choruses, the melodic payoffs, they are, oh, love that. Really good, really works. It's a song that keeps you on your toes. Every little change feels like a reward. The comparison I always used to use, and I'm going to use it again in this example, is it's like the best kind of roller coaster. A roller coaster should be twisting, turning, taking you in different directions, and you should feel like wow, you're being thrown around, but at the same time feel safe that the journey is well designed, and you're going to get to the other end feeling excited but not dead. So yeah, for me this was an absolute win. Brilliant stuff. And Hanabiya once again, or Hanabiya, I've got to learn to actually pronounce it correctly. I hear it wrongly pronounced so many times, and my pronunciation isn't that great anyway. But yeah, in my opinion, this is brilliant. Really like it. As always, get in the comments, tell me what you think. And until I hopefully see you very soon for the next one of these, for now, ciao ciao.